Before Russia's full-scale invasion, Ukraine produced enough food to feed over 400 million people worldwide, and accordingly, it helped feed every 20th person on the planet. To understand the scale, it should be noted that world exports amount to 460 million tons of grain per year. Ukraine supplied 15 million tons. What happens when one of the world's major agricultural suppliers goes out of business? Countries that do not have strategic food stocks are on the verge of starvation. This fact is difficult to grasp immediately, but Russia's invasion of Ukraine directly led to the aggravation of the hunger problem all over the world. How? Let's dive into the context. There is the so-called United Nations World Food Programme in the world. It aims to fight hunger and provide food to third world countries. So 50% of all grain of the United Nations World Food Programme was supplied by Ukraine. Why did Ukrainian grain play such a crucial role? Ukraine had a developed system of ports and free access to two seas, which allowed quickly supplying raw materials in large quantities all over the world. Consequently, the poorest countries of Africa, Asia and Latin America literally depended on the availability of Ukrainian grain. Russia's aggression against Ukraine caused a shortage of 30 million tons of grain in entire Africa. The aggravation of the hunger problem directly affects stability in the world. After all, hunger leads to riots, mass migration, which exacerbates another problem – an increase in the number of refugees from third world countries. Rising prices are no less a threat to the food security of every one of us. For example, over 1,200 bakeries across South Korea shut down during the first half of 2022, as Russia's invasion of Ukraine caused prices for key ingredients such as wheat, flour or oil to spike. Where is South Korea and where is Ukraine, you may ask? 24th February 2022, Russia invades Ukraine. The Russian military seizes Ukrainian ports or shells them. Upon the invasion, at least 20 million tons of grain, which were supposed to be exported immediately, were stuck in ports and elevators. There is a shortage of grain in the world. This instantly affects prices, not only world stocks. In March 2022, the basic index of food prices reaches its historical maximum. So, if you happen to see the price of bread rising, or you can't find sunflower oil on store shelves in any corner of the world, say thank you to Russia. And what about Russia? Of course, they see this chaos, and they begin to purposefully destroy the agricultural infrastructure of Ukraine. Fields are shelled. Their crops burn, and the land becomes unfit for sowing due to landmines. Russia hits granaries with precision-guided missiles, destroying existing stocks. In the occupied territories, the Russian army seizes grain stocks and equipment, taking the loot to Russia. In 2022 alone, almost 6 million tons of wheat were stolen from territories not controlled by Ukraine. This cannot continue like this. That is why Ukraine, together with its allies, are starting to work on alternative ways of exporting food, using trucks, river transport and railways. The Black Sea Grain Initiative was a great international victory. On 22nd of July 2022, thanks to negotiations led by Turkey and the United Nations, two agreements were signed, one between UN, Turkey and Ukraine, the second between Russia, Turkey and the UN. Black Sea Grain Initiative provides for the safe export of Ukrainian grain through 3 Odessa ports. With each subsequent month, Ukraine resumed exports while the price index fell. However, even participation in the grain initiative did not stop Russia from food terrorism. Russia artificially disrupted the process of sending ships with Ukrainian grain, delaying inspections. Furthermore, Russians continued to attack Ukrainian agricultural infrastructure with missiles, and on the 17th of July 2023, Russia announced that it was finally withdrawing from the Black Sea Grain Initiative. The next day, Russians shelled Odessa. Over 9 days of shelling, Russia destroyed 180,000 tons of grain, 26 port infrastructure facilities, and 5 civilian ships. Grain prices rose again by 15% over a 2-week period. Russia's propaganda is trying to convince the world that the rise in food prices was caused by international sanctions against it. In fact, the sanctions are not aimed at Russia's agricultural sector. Their purpose is to prevent the financing of the Russia's military machine, the main cause of food crisis. Any Russia's profits are an opportunity to develop new weapons, and therefore new attacks, including on the agricultural sector of Ukraine and ports. What is the likely purpose of Russia's food terrorism? to undermine the economy of Ukraine and its agricultural sector, to block the export of Ukrainian grain in order to create instability in the world, to use food blackmail to make the West ease sanctions against the aggressor, to create a humanitarian catastrophe in order to provoke another wave of refugees to Europe. Due to hunger and malnutrition, Ukraine and its allies are resisting the aggressor, discovering new ways of exporting food to countries that need it. However, as long as Russian aggression against Ukraine continues, there is always a risk of food crisis. After all, Russia uses food as a weapon against humanity on purpose.